Hello, my wonderful, beautiful friends. Guys, welcome back to our /EntitledPeople, where people truly believe it's all about them and no one else matters. And in today's episode, what is more self-entitled than stealing from and defrauding others? And one OP tells a story about the time this whole Karen family band together to sue for $5 million. And it backfires so hard. Guys, I hope you enjoy the stories, don't shake your heads too hard, and as always, you can send or link your post to this email right here. Let's dive in. So this happened many years ago. I was young, married, and pregnant, the perfect trifecta for social ostracization. Most people felt that I'd married up, as my husband came from money and he had a good job, which meant that unlike most young married people, I had a beautiful home and nice things. Just about everyone my age was either in college or still in high school. Also, most of the people I knew who were married and pregnant were much older than me. I was having a hard time. Naively, I initially tried to make and maintain friendships with people my age or younger. Now, this was a problem for so many reasons. One of them being is that when you're young, lonely, and have nice things that most other young people don't have, you can draw the wrong kinds of friends. I developed a friendship with this one girl who was finishing her senior year in high school. We had gone to the same school, and she was a freshman when I was a junior. We had some friends in common. She started coming over to my house and hanging out. One evening, she asked if she could bring a friend to the house for dinner. I said, sure. At one point that evening, my friend's guest asked to use the restroom. My husband and I explained where it was, but we didn't take her, trusting that she would find it herself. She walked around the corner in the direction of said bathroom, and she came back shortly after. The night ended with no clue on my husband's or my part that things were about to get crazy. About a week later, I couldn't find a pair of earrings I wore on my wedding day. My husband had bought me a pearl and diamond necklace and earring set as a wedding gift. We tore the house apart looking for them to no avail. My husband then said that I must have set them down somewhere and forgotten, but eventually we'd find them. I was anxious about it, but I knew the last place I'd had them was at home. We also hadn't done any major deep cleaning or vacuuming, so I knew they had to be around somewhere. A few weeks went by, and I suddenly noticed that one of our checking accounts that we set up as a business account for my husband was massively in the negative to the tune of almost $1,000. Most of it was overdraft fees because we didn't keep much of a balance in that account. I immediately called my husband and I told him we had a large negative balance in that specific account. Neither of us had been using the debit card for that account mistakenly, so we began reviewing the charges. All the charges were for stores at the same local mall, and they were for places where teenage girls would typically shop. There were dozens of small to medium purchases, each followed by a $25 overdraft fee once they spent the initial balance we kept in the account to avoid penalties. This all added up to about $1,000 in total theft. We hadn't had many people over, and we specifically kept that debit card in our master bedroom, so it was pretty easy to figure out what happened and who was responsible. It wasn't that much of a hop, skip, and jump to also figure out where my earrings went. And seriously, pissed doesn't begin to describe my mental state. I'd been incredibly generous with this friend. I had welcomed her into my home, and I had cooked for her and her friend. So I called every store in the mall, and I began asking if they had security cameras. Most did not, but one store had just recently installed security cameras due to issues with shoplifting. They let me know that while they had recorded footage from that day in question, they couldn't hand it over to me, but they would be more than happy to provide it to police if I filed a report. I then contacted my bank. I asked them what the procedure was for declaring charges fraudulent and reversing them. They indicated that an investigation would need to take place, and that I had a limited amount of time to make that decision before I permanently assumed responsibility for those charges. They also made it clear that the overdraft fees would not be reversed unless I declared the charges fraudulent, so I did some more digging. $2,000 in theft was the cutoff for felony charges. My earrings were worth approximately $800. We also had about $1,000 worth of charges and overdraft fees in the checking account. So that's when I contacted my quote friend, and I let her know the horrible news that someone we'd had over at the house had stolen from me. I explained to her that my pearl earrings from my wedding had gone missing, and that someone had stolen a debit card that we kept upstairs in my master bedroom before running up charges at the mall. She seemed very sympathetic, and she said, "Oh my goodness, that's terrible." I then told her a very nice little white lie that we were gonna pursue felony charges since between the earrings, the charges at all of these stores, and the overdraft fees, more than $2,000 worth of theft had occurred. Hearing that, she was quick to chime in with the information that she was pretty sure there would be no way to prove who used my debit card, as the stores at the mall I'd mentioned had no security cameras. And that's when I thought, bingo. Thanks for confirming what I knew. That's when I helpfully supplied the information that one of the stores had recently installed security cameras, and they were preparing to hand it over to the police once I file a report. She then got extremely quiet after that, and she said she had to go. Not so surprisingly, she called me back shortly after, and she asked if she could come over. She shows up within 30 minutes, not only with my pearl earrings and debit card, but also a small diamond ring that I'd inherited from my great aunt that I had no clue was missing. And that ring alone was well over $4,000. On top of that, she had a very well-rehearsed little explanation. She said she hadn't stolen a thing from me, that her friend did it all, that she snuck up my stairs, into my bedroom, and she stole some of my jewelry and my debit card, under the pretense of using my bathroom. When I pointed out that clearly she knew about the theft and yet said and did nothing, she began crying, arguing that she was in a difficult spot and she didn't want to betray her friend. Clearly, I didn't qualify as a friend. She also confessed that there were multiple others involved in the shopping spree at the mall, including her. She seemed to be quite content to participate in racking up charges on my checking account along with her, quote, friend, despite claiming she hadn't stolen from me. Now, I was honestly devastated by the near loss of sentimental pieces of jewelry, which I felt incredibly fortunate to have back. This made it easy for me to shut down her attempts at emotional manipulation, which, believe me, she tried. I made it clear that as far as I was concerned, whatever happened next was up to them, and that I had no problem seeing them all charged with felony robbery. One of the four involved was 17, but the others were 18, so felony charges could have been a pretty big deal. I demanded all the names, parents' contact info, and I made it clear if I didn't get it, I was going to the police. I then called the parents and told them what their angels had done. I also informed the parents that I would provide their children with the opportunity to repay the full balance of what they charged on my checking account plus overdraft fees. I also made it clear that this was a time-sensitive offer that expired with about a week of buffer time. That was before the deadline to file fraud with my bank in case they failed to follow through. Needless to say, the parents were horrified by the behavior and they were extremely grateful for my offer. It was quite satisfying to know that the four of them had to get jobs and work long hours over the next few weeks in order to pay me back. At one point, my former friend tried to question me about the amount they owed, claiming it seemed like way more than what they spent and it wasn't fair that she had to get a job to pay me back. She even tried to play the "we're friends" card. I took great pleasure in explaining to her that we were no longer friends, how they racked up overdraft fees that the bank refused to reverse unless I filed fraud claims. I also took great pleasure to tell her that their little shopping spree had cost them about 3 to 4 times what it would have if they just used their own money. My former friend also tried to ask for more time, and she insisted it was way too hard to pay me back in such a short period of time. I just couldn't contain my laughter when asking her point blank why I should trust her or take any risk on, given her recent actions, and that shut her up pretty quickly. Ultimately, I received all of my jewelry back and I was repaid for all the charges and overdraft fees. I never spoke to any of them ever again. Seriously, with friends like that, who needs enemies, right? And I just can't help but to think that OP's, quote, best friend used her from the start. And you gotta love the cut me some slack, we're friends bit, like you can pound sand, my friend. With that said though, OP was very compassionate and nowhere near as petty as they could have been. And you gotta commend her for that, because had that been me, guys, oh hell no, you guys are all getting what you deserve, you're all going to jail, maximum charges, blah blah blah, right? Like, you don't get to come to my house where I serve you food and then steal from me and have me go easy on you, like how dare you? But yeah, the way OP handled it, great way to handle them, kudos to you for taking the high road. But yeah, let me know what you would do if you were in OP's shoes. So this is a long one, so buckle yourselves up. I used to be a supervisor for public parks in charge of lifeguard staff and pool maintenance. In my opinion, this story is pure gold. So around 1999/2000-ish, I get a series of complaints from patrons all in the same family, claiming that they all got sick after going to one of my pools last summer. So I do what I usually do in those situations, and I verify the water quality monitoring systems we have in place, and then go back to the logs for the period mentioned in the complaints. I laugh it off and go back to work. Well, a few weeks later, another set of complaints. This time stating that health conditions have worsened, that they've had water samples from the facility analyzed by an independent lab, and also stating that I didn't respond to the first set of complaints. After the summer season ended, probably around late October, I get a call from the city's lawyer. We are being sued by the family. The results from the lab came in, and our pool water was full of E. coli bacteria and other nasty bugs. And the family wants a huge cash settlement, and the lawyer asked if it's worth going to court, if we had a solid defense. I tell the lawyer that we can go to court, that if we lose, I'll have my own private insurance pay the amount we would end up having to pay, as well as any fines that might come from the government. The lawyer knows me, and I had to deal with other situations with her in the past. She knows how I work, and she knows we have nothing to worry about just from the tone of my voice. But I explain the whole situation. She then laughs, writes up a countersuit, but just for our legal fees. Thinking back, I should have only said, "Don't worry, I got this." I then gather all the documentation I have, including the different procedure manuals I wrote, reports my team have written, complaints we've received, etc. It's a big file, but I'm excited. Our court date arrives, and I can barely hold back my smile, and I fear the judge will be angered that I don't take the proceedings seriously. The family goes in, and then explains they all got sick. 4 adults, 6 kids, and 2 toddlers. That they lost days, weeks, and months of work. They also said that they couldn't wait for the public health system. I'm in Canada, so they decided to pay to go to private clinics for treatment. They then had experts explain the health issues the family had and probable cause for such problems. They also had the laboratory they hired explain how the water analysis was done. Everything checked out for the family. Their story made sense. They were suing us for multiple millions, if I remember correctly, almost 5 million for punitive damages. We were a city, after all, and we put the safety of our citizens in peril. At this point, I was called to testify by the family's lawyer. I was asked what our water analysis procedure was. I explain that our system constantly records the water quality as it goes through the filtration system, and seriously, our water system doesn't mess around. Every few minutes, the different parameters are recorded, including chlorine levels, water temperature, pH, alkalinity, and about 10 other chemical markers for a total of 15 readings. I also explain that our staff on top of that takes manual measurements of 3 chemicals, as well as water temperature every 2 hours. I also explain that we take turbidity readings once a week and bacterial measurements every 2 weeks. I also explain our procedure when any of the measurements don't reflect what the law requires, and also explain that we go above what the law asks for most, if not all measurements. Then, I'm asked if my staff took the measurements at the pool because the family claimed that nobody ever checked the water quality. That's when I answer that my team did not in fact take any measurements. I was then asked if our automated system was properly calibrated according to the manufacturer's schedule. I confirm that it was not, at this point holding back laughter. Basically, I agree to everything the family's lawyer says. Then it comes our lawyer's turn to ask me questions. I'm first asked if I've ever heard about the family. That's when I produced documentation about the problems they had caused in another one of my pools in the past 2 years, as well as the number of times they were kicked out of the facility and the 3 times we needed police intervention to have them removed. I'm then asked to produce the water quality for every other basin I'm responsible for. This is when I pull out 40 plus binders. These binders contain the lab results we get every other week, the water analysis forms filed by my staff, and the water analysis documents done by our automated system. I then produce time cards for every facility except the one that was mentioned in the lawsuit. I produce documents after documents, answering question after question after question. And then comes the big one. And the judge is very interested by that one too. The city's lawyer says, "Mr. OP, you've proven how diligently you take care of every basin under your responsibility and how well you log all the data you receive from each facility. You obviously take pride in your work and the quality of services offered, as well as the health of the community. So how is it that you're unable to provide any document, time card, reports, complaints other than the families for the period in question?" Now it's my turn to explain. I said, well, during these dates, the park and pool were being renovated. They weren't open to the public and the pool had no water in it. The pool area was basically a big hole in the ground for the whole summer. We only filled it for 2 days, still closed to the public, when we tested the new filtration system. Hearing me say that, the experts brought in by the family that were still there turned bright red in anger. The judge was clearly unhappy. The family was sputtering, claiming that they identified the wrong park in the lawsuit, but their lawyer was already packing up his things and the judge wouldn't hear it. The city got their legal fees paid for. Now, were they an entitled family trying to get back at the city for having been kicked out of a pool a couple of times, or were they freeloaders looking for an easy payday at the tune of a few $1,000,000? I can't say. All I know is after that, there was a huge red X next to their name in the court system. Attempted fraud. I hope the courts went back in their files and similar cases involving that family were reopened. Talk about a plan backfiring so hard, guys, and honestly, I'm glad it did because that scummy family deserves nothing, let alone millions of dollars. And let this be a lesson learned, like if you're planning on suing someone, get all the details straight or you're in for a surprise come court day. Like, I'm actually surprised the family lawyer didn't dig deeper into the case, like maybe they only saw dollar signs. Who knows? Guys, let me know your thoughts on this post. So this happened a long time ago. I lived in an illegal rental in a place you'd call a landlord's market. There was a housing shortage, and although I had a great job, no credit problems, no background issues, it was impossible to rent somewhere affordable because of my dog. I eventually found a great place, but it came with a nutty landlord who we'll call Karen. The downside is she lived on the property. I thought, that's fine. It's cheap, affordable, blah blah blah, so I take it. For the next 12 months, I endure the landlord's violation of my rights. She kept taking deposits she shouldn't have, micromanaging my personal life and my guests. It's all pretty awful. The woman was always high on painkillers with tiny pin needle pupils, telling me weird stuff and trapping me in conversations I'd rather not hear. Faced with homelessness, I take the trampling of my rights and privacy, but the woman made me miserable. After about a year, I had enough. She crossed the line when she had my boyfriend removed by the police while I was at work one day. She claimed he had been staying with me for more than 48 hours, which he didn't. He had just come by for a visit and he wasn't even there long. On top of tossing my boyfriend out, she delivered a bill for his rent and utilities, claiming that he stayed at my place the past 2 weeks and no one was in my house. The woman had already bullied me and I guess she thought she could extort me. On top of that, she created fake court paperwork to intimidate me. The bills I received from her are insane. Like if you took a look at it, you'd know that this isn't written by someone in their right state of mind. She gets all sorts of details wrong, and she makes personal statements that are inappropriate. This is when I finally decide to stand my ground. Extortion is the limit. Everything was falsified, and I think it was the Vicodin talking and making her brave. As an aside, that will be super relevant later, her employer had an open fraud case against her. She told me early in my tenancy because she dared them to come after her. Perhaps she should have not dared so hard. After the fake tenancy debacle, crap gets real. I take off work to read up on my rights and protect my dog and stuff, and she starts harassing me. Specifically, she did these things over the course of a few days. Number 1, she called me repeatedly from a block number and asked for a stripper/call girl. Number 2, she called my work as a new landlord seeking a reference, and she told them that I was partying, which made no sense. Number 3, she came into my yard at 11 o'clock at night and she stomped on my porch to scare me. And then she walked out of my yard saying it's a free country when I asked what the hell she was doing. Number 4, she called the Humane Society and she told them that I had a vicious dog on the loose who attacked her dog. And lastly, she called the police and she sent them to my job. I work with kids, and she claimed she found drugs in my house and that I had a plan to hurt sad kids. Needless to say, I was so freaked out by all of these things. I got a restraining order against her. She wouldn't stop from trying to ruin my career and getting my dog euthanized in an attempt to intimidate me. It was good for 3 years until I refused to pay. I end up getting out of my lease, which is a long story, and I had a restraining order for 3 years against her, and she didn't know my new address. The torment she put me through was unbelievable, and this is how I got back at her. Remember that fraud case she boasted about? Well, it came back to bite her. The landlord boldly did construction on her property, high as a kite on Vicodin while collecting disability because she was, quote, wheelchair bound. And this is a huge issue. She played the system into getting into paid early retirement while eating pills all day and collecting money from illegal rentals while probably extorting so many people. 4 months before I moved out, I caught her doing construction and I was feeling vindictive, so I decided I should document her fraud. I caught her doing her activities, building a tool shed, all with no wheelchair. The woman was bold, and she figured she could never get caught. She was doing all sorts of physical activity. I just filmed her and made sure the date was noted because she was an awful human who was leeching off the system. All that said, shortly after moving out, when the restraining order was in effect, I went to her employer and I offered evidence in his fraud case. He was elated that I had such strong evidence. He then put me in touch with private investigators and I handed over the evidence after sitting down with them and giving them my statement of her activity and how she was mobile at home. And the thing is, I didn't have to exaggerate, I didn't have to lie. I just told them exactly what happened. A few months later, I called the investigator whom I kept in touch with. And I found out my evidence was what really sealed the deal. She was convicted of disability fraud. She was fired from her position, and she was potentially gonna pay back years' worth of disability payments. And I can't help but to smile knowing I did that. I'm the reason her scam fell apart. The woman thought that she could bully me into extortion. She didn't. She thought she could ruin my career and hurt my dog when I stood up to her. She didn't. In fact, I won. If she did have to pay it back, she would only have her house to pay with. My dream is that she lost her house, ended up a renter, and just hopes for a kind landlord. Guys, there is nothing better than hearing a story about a psycho Karen landlord getting what they deserve, and in this case, losing her job and possibly having to sell her home to pay back the money. And seriously, she had it coming for a long time. She just messed with the wrong person that day. And this person comments, "It's not potentially. She absolutely will be paying back every penny of disability she got. If she finds a job, her wages will be garnished for years. If she refuses to work, the government will put liens on her property and foreclose on her ass. Depending on the law where you live, any property that she bought with that money may be seized outright as proceeds of a crime. And this person says, I don't know how long this was or where you are, but in many states, an illegal rental means you can sue her for all the rent you've paid and get it all refunded. That would be the cherry on top. So I recently shared a funny story from my old job in a fish and chip shop to my friends, and a few people suggested that I share this one to you. It's about a very, very angry mother who wanted to get me arrested for fraud for impersonating myself. This one takes place on a late afternoon shift just before dinner rush, so we had a manager and 2 servers in, including myself. Also, an important note for this story is I used to have my hair dyed a bright blue color for a lot of my time working at the shop, but I had recently dyed it back to brown as I was applying for professional positions in the business world. So we're all going about our business, taking orders and getting ready for dinner rush. And this is when Karen comes in with her kids. Now, she's a regular, not a friendly regular, but we typically see her a few times a week. I take her order, and my colleague starts making up her food. As I'm packing it, the woman seems annoyed. So I ask if everything's okay with the order, as I'm concerned I've made a mistake, and I would rather rectify it right then and there. The woman just sighs, and she tells me it's fine, but she misses having her order taken by the girl with the blue hair, as she was much faster and much more polite than me, and she asked if she still works there and what days she works. Now, my service hasn't changed. I'm still doing my job the same as usual, and the only difference is my dyed hair. I'm also the only one with unnatural colored hair, so she's definitely talking about me. So I say, thank you so much for the compliment, that it's actually me. I've just dyed my hair, but I appreciate the comments on my service this time, and I will try to improve. I've got another 7 hours on this shift, so I'm super polite, as the last thing I want is for this woman to kick off right before dinner rush when I'm stuck here all night. And that's when the woman goes nuts. She tells me that I'm committing fraud, that she's gonna have me fired and probably arrested. The woman even tried to rope my colleague in to admit I'm lying, at which point they slip out the back to locate a manager who was cooking. And seriously, the woman was losing it. She was saying, how could I claim that I, with my terrible service, is that lovely girl with the blue hair who usually served her? At this point, her kids are also trying to insist that I'm clearly the same person, but she keeps pushing them out of the way and yelling that mommy is handling this. I don't have the energy for this, so I try apologizing, and I even offer her a free drink for the inconvenience, just to get her to shut up. But the woman's not having it. She asks for my manager. My manager's been standing at the back with my coworker, literally pissing himself with laughter at this woman for the last 2 minutes, but he puts on his customer service face and he comes over. She then starts demanding that I get fired. He just lets her rant for a while and then asks if she happens to have a receipt from a previous transaction with the girl she wanted to be served by. The woman pulls one out of her bag triumphantly, like literally with a flourish, thinking she's got her way and proved me to be the scoundrel she thinks I am. But the receipt has my name at the top, clear as day. He then points to my name tag and he has her read out the name on the receipt and the name on the name tag. The woman, of course, gets super flustered, but she's way too far gone now to admit her mistake. She starts claiming that I'm wearing someone else's tag and that she'll have me arrested for identity theft. My manager at that point is totally done. He tells her to get out and don't come back without a better attitude. For the next 9 months I worked there, and yes, it did take that long for me to get a job, she stands outside, sending her very embarrassed kids in twice a week, so they can still get takeaway. And of course, where I live in the winter, it rains a lot. And that's what we call karma, guys. But that's also her doing, right? Like, she could have easily admitted her mistake and apologized, but no. The woman stands her ground and she ends up having to stand outside in the rain while her kids ran inside. I freaking love it. Classic Karen move though, right? Like when the truth is found, you have to double down. And I'm sure threatening to call police for attempted fraud didn't make the situation any less embarrassing for Karen. And that, my friends, brings us to another end of our /Entitled People. Guys, I hope you enjoyed today's stories. If you did, hit that thumbs up. And if you're not subscribed, consider subscribing so you don't miss these crazy, crazy stories. And if you missed the last episode on the channel, it's an r/Entitled People episode, another one where psycho Karens think they rule the world and it backfires so hard. Guys, go check it out if you haven't. And myself and Stevie Boy will see you guys in the next one. We love you.